I'm going to take you on a journey today, stepping things up on the agentic workflow side. We're going to look at the beautiful world of Claude Code. And even if you're non-technical, you'll be able to follow along because it's essentially like using ChatGPT on steroids with the ability to do pretty much whatever you want. So whether it's using end-to-end in combination, Zapier, Fellow, everything you can imagine, the reason why myself, my team, a lot of our clients have moved to Claude Code, it is the land of milk and honey for AI and AI development. And it's so popular that even though it was designed for coding, it spun up tons of non-technical founders and individuals trying to use it. So they came up with a new product built with Claude Code using Claude Cowork. So this is an ecosystem that's evolving really quickly, and Claude Code is becoming very popular. Now, my goal isn't to vibe code something for you in the next 20 to 30 minutes. It's more so to show you how you can use things like Claude Code to do on-the-ground, practical, actionable stuff. And the very simple example I'll show you is just using Claude Code to take a folder that many of you have, even if you refuse to admit it, full of meetings, full of disparate CSVs, full of disparate files, full of chaos, essentially. And you want to unify that. And you keep pushing it off. You keep creating new folders. You plug them in other folders to trick yourself that you've actually cleaned things up. But this will help you not only analyze, organize, but do whatever you want. So the goal is we want to get you out of what's called versioning hell, where if you've ever done this in high school or undergraduate, or even in your day job, where you have version 1 of a document, version 2, then you have version 1 final, and then version 2 final, and then you have this endless loop of final documents, all to leave it alone as soon as the deliverable is ready, and then you forget about it. So we want to go from there to organizing different files and folders. It could be different kickoff meeting notes, could be meetings in general, and bring that into unison. So let's say you wanted to understand the real budget of a project, a real deadline. What was the tech stock you talked about 2 or 3 months ago? What's the scope? Who owns what? And all of this lives in a series of files, but you just don't have time. So one of the many solutions you can use is Claude Code, because in a way, 1 year ago, you needed to be a developer to use Claude Code well. But now as someone non-technical, you can just ask it to do X. It will figure out what code it needs to write on your behalf to do X. And the best part is it has access to your computer, your files, and you can make it secure, meaning you don't have to use, let's say, Claude from its core API. You can use it through things like Amazon Bedrock. You have all these different tunnels to use this securely if you need to. So our goal, and I'll show you basically the post-mortem. I don't want you to have to wait for the buffering of Claude Code because sometimes it can take a while. I went through, I did this. I'll show you the before, I'll show you the after, and I'll show you the part in between. So Claude Code will take what we called project chaos, all the requirements, all the meeting notes, all the specs, any data and emails, read everything, and essentially this is the agentic workflow. So this is you looking very handsome and beautiful, and you just say the words, analyze this folder, and behind the scenes, that one unbelievably vague request, very similar to what Aiden just showed us, Claude has the ability to take a very minimalistic prompt, especially Claude Code with Claude 4.5 Opus, rather. It's able to take a very vague prompt and extrapolate what are the next 6 to 8 subtasks that are associated to said vague prompt. So we don't live in the world of 2023 to 2025 where you had to really spoon feed everything. Although I will show you examples of how to prompt correctly. So just taking that one prompt, it will read documents, parse any structured and or unstructured data, extract any key facts, compare versions. If there are contradictions, it will not just look at the files, it will read the files. It will identify risks, compile action items, and generate outputs. And the goal is, initially, you just get a series of what we call markdown files. You could just think of it as a plain text file. Each one of these gives you the TLDR, which stands for too long, don't read. I'll say that a couple times probably. The TLDR of what it found, what it prescribes, what the diagnosis is, and most importantly, you can ask it to go from this to actually organizing the file and creating a fully synthesized folder. So as my demo, I had to ask Claude Code to create a chaotic folder that we call demo project chaos. So imagine that you had all of these different folders and files. So we have data, we have emails, We have meeting notes, we have requirements, we have specs. And you want to get to this point where you have single source of truth. If we take an example of meeting notes, this could have been a kickoff meeting from months ago where some key decisions had been made and some context that would have changed over the course of the business, especially over the holiday break and the new year. Things change, memory kind of fails you as new things evolve. So our goal is to unify this, keep the things that matter, and get to the after, which is going from this to something like this, where this is one unified document of all the meetings, removing all the different progressions or duplicate information or information that was updated or evolved over time to create unified files. And yes, these docx files, these beautifully formatted docx files, I didn't make them. Claude Code wrote the text, generated it, analyzed the files. It decided that it didn't know how to create a docx file or a PDF. So then it went to Anthropic servers to understand, how do you make a PDF and a docx file in less than 10 seconds? It pulled that, what's called a skill, a literally skill, and was able to create these documents in bulk. And the beauty of this is, as soon as I show you my terminal, if you're non-technical, you might be initially scared, but there's nothing to be scared of, and I'll show you why. So if we flip really quickly to our terminal, all I had to do was spin up Claude Code wherever you want. Once you install it, which by the way, you can just install copy pasting a command from a browser, you can spin it up in a normal terminal. You can spin it up in something called Cursor or Windsurf. You have so many options. There's even one called Anti-Gravity from Google. All you have to do is just literally say magic words like you would as a child, where you say Claude, and that one command can spin everything up, and you'll see the beautiful crab, Claude Code. And now officially, you have whatever folder you're opening it up in. You have a command line where you just have to enter natural language. And trust me, it's just ChatGPT with the ability to create files and folders and just manage them. So don't think of it as something that is completely out of reach, because it's really not. Behind the scenes, all I did to make this work was I dumped our chaotic folder called demo project chaos. And I just use one command. It's literally called /init. /initialize basically does the following. It basically tells Claude Code, go and onboard yourself on what the files and folders are that you can see in front of you. Once you're done, come back to me and let's start the task. So no prompting needed. I just said initialize. You'll see right here, it went through, it read, it wrote. It's created what's called a CLAUDE.md file. You can think of this as a briefing note from your AI telling you what it understands about what you've provided it. And if you provide it with this CLAUDE.md, if we take a peek, all you have to do is just click it. You'll get a preview. You can see it stores all the information about this project that's called Project Phoenix. It has the key context. It walks through its understanding of what the current state of the chaos is. It has critical information about the requirements, unresolved conflicts that it's analyzed and read. And this is the beauty that is hard to offload. Even if you have an executive assistant, they would have to go and read each and every file to double check what matters, what doesn't matter, what decision changed over time, and let me keep the most recent thing with a paper trail of what happened before. So this is something that happened in under a minute. That would take people hours to days, potentially weeks. And once it has that summary, I entered this magical prompt. And in case the terminal isn't too easy on the eyes, this is what it looks like. And it's not too complicated. I said, you are a project analyst. Analyze all the documents in this folder and create a single source of truth for this project. Create a new folder called single source of truth and generate the following files inside it. Project README. So walk through the current project, including the project overview, the current timeline and dates, the budget summary, the tech stack status, the team and the stakeholders, any contradictions that you find, any risks that you find, any action items that are still outstanding to this day. So this is the first of, honestly, I think 2 or 3 prompts that we went from chaos to order without any form of technicality, no coding, and just purely relying on Claude itself. So if we go back to our beautiful diagrams here, the goal is to initially create a series of files that can read and create a summary of the entire project, then output a contradiction report to tell you, okay, looks like October 15th, the team voted no. Then 28th, they voted yes, then no, then eventually December 5th, the final decision was a yes, which is probably familiar to you if you've worked in a bureaucracy. So it'll also output risk flags such as, okay, so our QA lead returns January 15th, testing starts January 20th, so we barely have any form of bandwidth or lead time. So these are the hidden nuggets, the insights that one unbelievably simple prompt can result in. And the last one are action items. So creating urgent lists. What needs to happen? What is the order of operations, of actions that have to occur for the project to be delivered on time? So that's the overall goal. And the goal is once we have these little summaries of contradictions and actions, we get this single source of truth with these files and folders, and then we hopefully get to the promised land. And the promised land is this, where we have all those files and folders, we have key content extracted, we have key files created, we have different files discovered, any analysis conducted, and then we're good to go. So going back into the land of milk and honey, you could see I was able to easily walk away from my computer, go grab a cup of Joe. It read through all the documents, through the calls you can see right here, calls from notes with Jennifer, action items, requirements, the 15 to 20 versions of final, use this one. And then it was able to realize, listen, I have no clue how to basically analyze a docx file. So I'm going to go and learn this skill. Once it extracted that skill from its servers, all of this code here, you can literally close your eyes if it intimidates you, because I was not involved in this process. It went, read everything from this project specs to the data files, then created our first checkpoint, which is the initial files and folders in the single source of truth. So this is what it came up with, the project overview, the contradictions, like we mentioned. And if we open it up, which I can just right-click, click on reveal, single source of truth, you'll see that it not only created markdown files, it created PDFs we can read through. So this is a series of priority action items. If I blow this up for you, just give me 2 seconds. It went through the summary of what was done, what was in progress, what's not started, what's overdue, action items in tabular format, multiple times. That's just one example of one file. Unassigned or unclear owner action items. So tasks that seem to be floating, project requirements that just seem to be there, they exist, but no one really has a pulse on them or has ownership over them. So over that, we also have the contradictions where we'll go through, and it's not worth zooming into. I'll give you basically the summary, and tells you, like, it looks like some people on the front end of the developer team are saying you should use these choices that seem to clash with some of these back-end choices. Now, if you're not a developer, you might not care, but it's good to be able to highlight that in the easiest way possible. Then we have the overall project README, where it goes through everything from the budget summary to the tech status, where it pretty much summarizes everything I just showed you. The team and the stakeholders, who seems to have decision authority, who's active or not active, because you can extract all this from meeting notes. So if someone said, hey guys, I'm going to be taking a week or two with my family, it's able to detect that and this file right here. So that's the beauty of using Agentic AI to help you make sense of the chaos. And this is the overall risk mitigation list. So you can see right here. Let me move myself out of the sunlight. All right. And then as you go through, you can see right here, it identifies everything. But this is just step one, right? So I just sent it to do step one. And this is the summary of what it completed. And then we know we're good to go from there. Now, folder, we want to actually have it organized. All I did was open another terminal. And the reason why, just for additional context, even if you're not as adept with agentic workflows, is every single language model in the world has what's called a context window. You can think of context window as your denominator of how long you can yap with AI before AI starts to completely tap out for that particular session. For something like Claude, as of this recording and session, is 200,000 tokens, which for all intents and purposes, you can assume is 150,000 words. So with those 150,000, you can make files, you can write code, you can write emails. Once you're out of that window of 200,000, you have to create a new session. And one thing you'll notice is because these are language models, As you get closer and closer to 150,000 words, Claude starts to do what's called hallucination, where it starts to forget, have amnesia of some of the requirements. So one thing I like to do is once I finish one part of a core set of tasks, I then create a brand new terminal. And in this one, we had a very simple prompt. I just said, go and look at the demo project folder. I want you to create a sibling folder. And we want to call it Project Phoenix Organized. And I want you to regenerate the files with the actual project documents, a clean technical specification document, a meeting summary where you summarize all the key decisions from all the meetings. We want the overall budget in a CSV. If there were different versions of the budget, Claude's able to detect that and create them as separate tasks and separate tabs rather. So even when it comes to creating and manipulating Excel files, this is something that Claude has done at the enterprise level. A lot of financial hedge funds use Claude for now discount model analysis, all kinds of financial analysis. And it's a skill that it can pull off the shelf as well. And then beyond that, in part 2, it generates analysis documents. So it basically takes what we built already and builds on them. And once again, after I'm done here, it takes over. It goes and it reads all the files. It realizes that certain of the docx files need special handling. It realizes that from our other session, it's already had the skill integrated and used within. It goes through pretty much everything here. The new folder, which we can see on the outside, you can see it's right over here once again. So this is the new world, the promised land, if it were. Then you have part 1 where it tells you exactly what it did. And this is without me telling it or instructing it to do so. So part 1, project documents. You have the requirements, you have the meeting summary, you have the budget, you have the timeline and the list of stakeholders. It tells you the size of the documents and even gives you a short summary of what is in those documents. So, and you'll see here the depth of my prompts. I made a living. My company's called Prompt Advisors for a reason. We used to do prompt engineering for companies because it was so difficult back 2-3 years ago. But now it can take an unbelievably vague and unspecified prompt like this. Please bring the folder into this repo. When I say repo, I mean repository. And then it organizes it for me, ready to go. And that's pretty much it for that particular process. So the beauty of Claude Code is because it has native access to everything that's on your computer, you just have to point it in the right direction and tell it where to go and how to actually work with it. And once you do this, by the way, you can ask it to create what's called a skill. So it doesn't matter. We moved from last year, there was this concept called an MCP server, which for those who don't know, stands for Model Context Protocol. And the long and short of it is it was an easier way to connect to backend services of different providers. And I know some of the other speakers have already mentioned in passing that their products also have MCP servers. MCP is awesome. I actively use it with myself and my team. But one of the things that came out, let's say 5-6 months ago, is the concept of a skill. And a skill allows Claude to pull that context just in time, meaning it doesn't bloat or inject itself in our very small number of words that we can use from until it's absolutely needed. So only when it realizes that it needs to create a docx file will it remember or remind itself on how to do so. And that's a beautiful thing because every new session, every new terminal starts as a blank slate. And that's what helps you build progressively over time. And you can see over here, a little preview. I've made it do so much from one vague prompt that it tells me that there's only 11% remaining in our context session. So just to give you an example, once you actually have completed something that you feel like you're going to do more than once, you can literally ask it to do the following. And I'm just going to dictate this. So this was great. I have a feeling that we're going to need to do this same exercise with different folders, with different structures and different files. But can you create a skill that you can invoke and you tell me what is the best way for me to invoke it? Ideally, I would just give you a document. I would tag the folder and say, hey, this one's chaotic too. Can you go bring this into order? And you'd find some way to push back on me, use what's called the Ask User Input tool to ask me questions proactively about that folder, my preferences, so I can help make the decisions and you can do all the work. Language, which is beautiful. and I can just send this over. If you're hearing a pinging sound, I just made it so my Claude always makes these interesting ding sounds, so I know that it's working. I'm working on different tabs. We'll see right now, it's invoked its skill, and this is very meta. So it has a skill to create skills. So once it understands what I'm going for, it goes and creates the skill. It starts realizing and basically reflecting on what it's done, and tries to compartmentalize and compress that into this small understanding that it can always remind it of itself. So think of a skill as a pseudo cheat sheet that you can go over and over. So as this goes through, now I can pray that this finishes in the course of the next minute or so to drive it home. Okay, it looks like we have good progress. And it's good for me to show you what's happening, because this is what's happening. So I could have another screen, writing emails. Claude is working away. It is reading. It is writing files as it sees fit. Now, if you take a peek here, it looks like it's created. There we go. Here is the documentation it's created. So it's created a skill called organize. Description is complete informative explanation of what the skill does. So analyze chaotic project folders and create clean, organized documentation. Use when a user points to messy folder with scattered files, conflicting documents, multiple versions. And then as we go down here, it tells me exactly how to invoke the skill and where it's located. So if I say, can you create a .claude folder? So if you and put it inside. A .claude folder essentially just acts as this routing function within Claude Code that can orchestrate everything. And if this seems a little bit too meta, this is the example of where it is. So if I open this up, you're right here, you can see that it's stored as a skill file. It can be also stored as a markdown file, depending on how you want to invoke it. And I can just say, listen, can you store it as a markdown file? My spelling is awful, so I'm going to go into dictation out of refuge. Can you store this as a markdown file called skill.md, so I can also show my audience here that I'm teaching them live how this works? So this should create another file that I should be able to give you the preview of, so you can see it in full, exactly what it looks like to have a skill. There we go. It should have written it. There it is. And you can see a skill is essentially a cheat sheet in plain English of exactly what needs to happen. So it says right here, user interview required. These are the questions it should ask me. What output formats? Where should the organized folder go? Content priorities, scope, batch questions logically. And then phase 3 is some form of analysis. So theoretically, I can open a brand new session. And we could do that right here. And I can say, can you organize the folder your skill? And then it should be able to realize that it has the skill. Sometimes the fact that I said organize should give it a pretty good hint. There you go. There's a skill. It's invoking it. And it's asking me, do you want me to proceed? I'll say yes, and don't ask again. Now it should interview me. Fingers crossed. Obviously, demos always fail in front of audiences, especially bigger ones, but hopefully it will make me look more intelligent. So right now it's exploring the folder. Once it explores the folder, our original chaotic folder, it should start to interview me on my preferences, on how we want to be able to harness the power of this skill. And just with the time that we have, fingers crossed it goes through. And while that loads, we'll take a little check on that shortly. The applications of Claude Code in general, the reason why there is so much discussion about Claude Code, why I'm teaching Claude Code for everyone on behalf of O'Reilly next month and the month after, is you can do everything you want. You can create dashboards, you can vibe code apps, you can use code for what it's designed for, which is actually creating backends and front ends. You can create handoff documentation. We've even getting full RFPs, where I'm talking 45-page RFP documents that use our branding, our style, the way we write. It goes and pulls use cases and case studies from case study folders. Really, like, the imagination is your only limit when you use things like Claude Code, which is why it's so important. Now it's still doing its thing, so maybe we'll sunset this for now, as we have only 2 minutes left. But if even looking at the terminal becomes intimidating, that's where you can go in refuge to different platforms. So as I alluded to before, there is a platform here called Claude Desktop. And if I open this up, this is where you have what's called Claude Code. Pretty much the same thing as Claude Code, except it has a beautiful, pretty front end. So if I just close this up, you can see that the progress, instead of staring at a terminal like you would see right here, it has a separate progress bar. And let me see if I can spin up something where there's progress completed. Yeah, there we go. Here's an area where I asked it to create a beautiful PowerPoint file. So I asked it, can you spin up some agents? And then it told me what agents it had access to. I told it, can you spin up some parallel research agents to help me make this PowerPoint? The agents, they all worked in parallel. They did research on the topics I was looking for. In this case, I asked it to create a deck for AI literacy. And then you could see each one started researching at the same time. It shared its progress bar right here of its to-do list. It showed me all its work. It showed me any context it needed. And then I could even open up the PowerPoint it gave me at the very end. And the first results you'll get with no instruction, no coding, no examples are actually beautiful. Like 5-10 years ago, I would pay someone to do stuff like this for presentations or anything along that lines. So with a sliver of the entire firepower of Claude Code, using it within Claude Code. So whether you have the guts, maybe the ammo you need from me, the fuel, even as a non-technical person, to jump into the land of Claude Code, if it's still intimidating to open up a terminal and look at that dark screen or that light screen, then you can also get a taste of it in Claude Cowork, which is already active with your Claude subscription. So hopefully that gives you a TLDR, finishing on time here, as how you can use Claude Code, not just for loosey-goosey, flimsy demos or vibe-coded apps, but actually use it for business application.